The train slid into the city station with a metallic shriek, its windows flashing neon signs and strangers' reflections. Nadia pressed her forehead against the glass, heart pounding. She had imagined this moment for months, arriving in the place where dreams could be carved from nothing. The suitcase by her feet carried only clothes and a portfolio of photographs that looked more hopeful than professional. Her mother's voice still echoed in her ears, warning her of men with false promises, of cities that devoured girls who believed in fairy tales. But Nadia refused to let fear rule her. She was 21, hungry, and certain the letter she clutched in her handbag was a ticket to transformation. The paper bore Adrian's name, signed with confidence, and the logo of a boutique agency she had searched 100 times online. His words promised exclusivity, a private casting that could lead to international contracts. She convinced herself it was fate, not chance. The air outside the station smelled of rain and cigarettes. Nadia walked through crowded streets, heels clicking, nerves trembling with excitement. Towers of glass loomed over her, and every billboard showing flawless faces seemed to whisper, "You could be next." She reached the address, an old building tucked between cafes and galleries. The wooden door stood heavy, paint chipped at the edges, yet a polished brass plaque gleamed with Adrian's name. She paused, adjusted her hair, and pressed the buzzer. The door opened almost instantly. Adrian stood there, taller than she expected, his suit tailored, his smile perfectly measured. His eyes lingered on her with an intensity that felt both flattering and unsettling. "You must be Nadia," he said warmly. "Yes," she replied, her accent soft but noticeable. "You're even more striking in person. Come in, we've been waiting for you." His voice wrapped around her like velvet. She stepped inside, the echo of her heels swallowed by high ceilings and white walls lined with abstract paintings. The place looked nothing like an office. Candles flickered on a glass table, and mirrors reflected her anxious posture. Adrian walked beside her, his presence commanding yet gentle. "Modeling is about more than beauty," he said. "It's about trust. Do you trust me, Nadia?" She hesitated. I want to." "That's enough for now." His smile deepened, as if he had already won something unspoken. He offered her a glass of water, asking about her journey, her family, her ambitions. Each question felt rehearsed, but his attention never wavered. Nadia found herself leaning forward, eager to be understood, eager to be chosen. Outside, the city darkened, rain beginning to patter against the windows. Nadia glanced around, noticing the locked door behind her and the silence that seemed too complete. Yet Adrian's charm drew her back each time her pulse quickened. He gestured toward the inner room. "Shall we begin the casting?" Nadia rose, clutching her portfolio. She followed him deeper into the loft, unaware the first step she had just taken was also the first into his shadows. The inner room was flooded with light. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors covered the walls, reflecting Nadia's uncertain steps from every angle. Cameras stood on tripods, their red standby lights blinking like watchful eyes. A backdrop of white fabric stretched across one corner, with softbox lamps angled as though ready for a magazine cover shoot. Nadia's heart lifted. For a moment it looked real. This was what she had dreamed of, the polished machinery of beauty and fame. She slipped her portfolio onto the table, its worn leather edges suddenly embarrassing in such a pristine setting. Adrian closed the door behind them with a muted click. The sound lingered, final and heavy. He moved with unhurried confidence, his hand brushing across the mirrors as if he owned every reflection inside them. "You're nervous," he said, his tone soothing but sharp beneath the surface. "Of course," she admitted, forcing a small laugh. "It's my first time here." "Good." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Nerves mean you care. They mean you'll give me everything." She nodded, uncertain of what he meant. Adrian circled her slowly, the way a photographer studies light on a subject. His eyes traced her posture, her face, her hands. Nadia felt exposed under his gaze, more vulnerable than if she had already stripped away her clothes. "Take off your coat," he instructed. She obeyed, folding it neatly over a chair. "Now the shoes. Modeling is balance, grace. You need to show me that." Her fingers fumbled with the straps. She wondered if this was normal, if real castings always felt so intimate. She remembered her mother's warnings again, the tremor in her voice when she said men prey on hope. Nadia pushed it aside. She had to believe this was professional. Adrian poured wine into 2 glasses, the liquid catching the light. He handed her one. "To new beginnings," he said. She raised it reluctantly. The sweetness burned her throat. "Relax," Adrian whispered. "Trust me, no one else will fight for your future like I will." The words wrapped around her like chains, disguised as silk. He guided her toward the backdrop, adjusting the lamps until shadows bent across her cheekbones. "Stand there," he ordered gently. "Chin up, eyes forward. Imagine the world watching you." She obeyed, heart racing, lips pressed tight. The cameras clicked though no one had touched them. The sound rattled her, phantom and insistent. Adrian smiled, stepping closer than before, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch lingered too long. "Perfect," he murmured, "but perfection requires surrender." The locked door echoed in her memory. The room, once promising, now felt like a cage built from glass and mirrors. Still, Nadia forced herself to hold his gaze, unwilling to reveal fear. Adrian moved to the wall and pressed a hidden switch. Somewhere below them, machinery stirred, a faint hum rising through the floorboards. "Don't worry," he said softly, almost tenderly. "The real casting hasn't even started." Nadia's stomach tightened. Whatever waited beneath this room was the truth behind his smile. The hum deepened, followed by the grind of gears. Nadia glanced around, mirrors flashing fragments of her frightened face. A section of the floor shifted, sliding aside to reveal a stairwell sinking into shadow. Adrian extended his hand. "Come, it's where the real magic happens." Her breath caught. Every instinct told her to run, yet his tone carried the calm certainty of a man who expected obedience. She placed her trembling hand in his, letting him guide her downward. The air grew colder with each step. The walls, stripped of paint, dripped with dampness. Bare bulbs flickered overhead, casting jittering light on rusted pipes. The glamorous loft above vanished into silence, replaced by an underground heartbeat. At the bottom, a heavy metal door waited. Adrian pushed it open with ease, revealing a chamber unlike anything she had imagined. The room smelled of metal and antiseptic. Chains dangled from hooks in the ceiling, and along the walls stood cabinets of instruments she couldn't name, polished steel glinting beneath the harsh fluorescent glow. Cameras were mounted in the corners, their lenses pointed inward like unblinking eyes. Nadia froze. This isn't a studio." Adrian smiled, shutting the door behind them with a hollow thud. "It's my sanctuary." Her throat tightened. "Why am I here?" "To see if you're different," he answered softly, stepping closer. "The others came for the same dream. They all failed me." "The others?" Her voice cracked. He brushed his fingers along the cold steel table in the center of the room, eyes never leaving her. "They pretended. Smiles for the camera, but no loyalty underneath. They broke their promises. Do you know what betrayal feels like, Nadia?" She shook her head quickly, fighting the urge to cry. "It's fire," he continued, his tone shifting between gentle and severe. "But maybe you'll understand me." Nadia backed against the wall, her chest rising in shallow breaths. "I just wanted to model. That's all." Adrian reached for a small leather strap, running it between his fingers like silk. "Modeling is a mask. I don't want masks. I want truth. I want surrender." The bulbs buzzed overhead, throwing his shadow long across the walls. Nadia's legs threatened to give way, but she forced herself to stand tall. If she collapsed now, she knew he would consume her completely. Adrian set the strap down and leaned closer, his voice almost tender. "No one out there will ever love you the way I will. They'll use you, abandon you. I'll keep you safe, if you trust me." His words sank like poison, dressed as comfort. She understood then, this chamber wasn't just a prison of steel, it was a prison of promises, designed to blur pain with affection. Adrian stepped back, eyes shining with possession. "Welcome home, Nadia." Her pulse thundered in her ears. She knew escape was no longer about doors or chains. It would mean untangling herself from the grip of his twisted love. Time dissolved in the chamber. Nadia couldn't tell when days ended or nights began. The only clock was Adrian, his footsteps above, the clink of keys, the rhythm of his moods. At first he starved her. Bread crusts, water left just beyond reach. When she protested, he chained her wrists higher, forcing her to stand until her muscles screamed. The pain blurred thought, and yet his voice cut through the haze with gentle insistence. "This isn't punishment," he said, brushing her cheek with the back of his hand. "It's discipline. Love without discipline is chaos." She flinched at his touch, but hunger forced her to nod. When she obeyed, he rewarded her. A warm meal, a blanket, even a smile that felt almost tender. He crouched beside her once, feeding her spoonfuls of soup as though she were fragile porcelain. "See how good it feels when you trust me?" His words sounded like care, but his eyes gleamed with ownership. Her body betrayed her with relief. The warmth of food, the softness of fabric, the illusion of comfort, it made her whisper thank you when every fiber wanted to scream. Adrian knew the power of contrast. Cruelty followed kindness like night followed day. Some mornings he woke her with ice water, laughing as she shivered on the floor. Other times he wrapped her in his coat, humming a lullaby so faint she wondered if it belonged to a forgotten childhood. The confusion burned deeper than chains. She hated him, yet some part of her clung to the moments he seemed human. One evening he entered carrying a scarlet dress. He held it up against her body, tilting his head like an artist studying his canvas. "You'll wear this for me," he whispered. "Not for the world, only me." Her voice trembled. "Why me?" "Because you listen," he answered. "Because you're not like the others. They lied. They tried to run. You stay." She didn't correct him. Staying wasn't choice, it was survival. But in his mind, her silence was devotion. Later, as he fastened the chains around her ankles, he leaned close. "Do you feel it, Nadia? The fire between us? It burns because it's real." Her lips parted, but no words came. The fire he spoke of was pain and hunger, yet it flickered with something more dangerous, the creeping thought that maybe, in surrender, she might survive. When he left, the chamber echoed with her ragged breathing. She pressed her forehead to the cold wall, tears tracing her cheeks. Part of her longed for escape. Another part dreaded the void beyond him, where no one waited. Above, his footsteps receded. The silence pressed close, but so did his promise. Nadia realized she was no longer fighting only his chains. She was fighting her own heart, slowly bending toward the man who burned her. Adrian's moods shifted like storms. Some days he was the punisher, eyes cold, hands merciless. Other days he softened, speaking as though Nadia were his confessor. In those rare hours of vulnerability, she glimpsed the brokenness beneath his control, and she learned to use it. One night he entered carrying a single candle instead of the harsh fluorescent light. The glow carved shadows across his face, making him look younger, almost fragile. He sat on the floor beside her, sighing heavily. "They all betrayed me," he murmured. "Every woman I trusted, every promise I believed. Do you know what that does to a man?" Nadia hesitated, then whispered, "It kills him inside." His eyes flicked up, surprised at her answer. For the first time she saw gratitude there. "Yes," he said, "that's why I had to build this place. To protect myself, to keep the liars away." She leaned closer, forcing her voice steady. "I won't betray you, Adrian. I'll stay. I'll be the one who understands." The lie burned her throat, but his expression softened, as if her words stitched some hidden wound. "You mean that?" "Yes," she said, lowering her gaze in feigned submission. "I belong to you." He reached for her hand, squeezing it with unsettling tenderness. "Then you're different. You're not like the rest." That night he unchained her wrists, letting her sit freely for the first time in days. He even offered her his coat, draping it across her shoulders. But freedom, even in fragments, sharpened Nadia's mind. She studied the chamber with new eyes. The key ring at his belt, the loose pipe near the corner, the shards of glass littering the floor where a bulb had shattered. Tools for survival, if only she could time it right. She began feeding his trust. Small smiles, murmured reassurances. She forced herself to look at him with a softness she didn't feel, to touch his arm when he spoke, to mirror the affection he demanded. Each gesture was a betrayal disguised as loyalty. Adrian opened himself further, confessing his past like a sinner desperate for absolution. He told her about the fiancé who mocked him, the women who left, the humiliation that festered until he built this chamber. His words dripped with bitterness, yet Nadia listened with patient eyes, nodding as though she forgave him. Inside, she built a pact with herself. Survive by pretending. Betray him with love until the moment came to strike. Adrian kissed her forehead before leaving, whispering, "You'll save me, Nadia. I know you will." She waited until the door clanged shut, then pressed her palms together, trembling. Every promise she had given him was a lie. But lies, she knew now, could be weapons sharper than glass. Her chance would come, and when it did, she would burn his trust to ashes. The chamber smelled of wine and sweat. Adrian had celebrated himself that evening, pouring glass after glass until his words slurred and his movements grew heavy. He spoke of destiny, of how he and Nadia were bound by chains stronger than steel. She laughed when he laughed, leaned close when he leaned near, masking every flicker of hatred behind the role she had perfected. Hours later, he collapsed onto the cot in the corner, boots still on, breathing thick and uneven. The keys dangled at his waist, glinting in the candlelight. Nadia's pulse thundered. This was the moment. She moved silently, inching toward him. Each step was a war between terror and resolve. She slipped the keys from his belt, her fingers trembling so hard the ring clinked softly. Adrian stirred, muttered something incoherent, then sank deeper into drunken sleep. Nadia hurried to the restraints, fumbling with the locks. The clatter of chains felt deafening, but one by one they opened, metal giving way to freedom. Her wrists were raw, her ankles swollen, but she barely felt the pain. She needed a weapon. The broken bulb in the corner shimmered faintly. Nadia crouched, collecting a jagged shard of glass. It bit into her palm, but she gripped it tighter, her lifeline carved from destruction. Adrian groaned, rolling onto his side. His eyes flickered open, hazy but searching. "Nadia, what are you doing?" Her chest seized. "I'm still here," she whispered, voice trembling but steady enough. "I just needed water." He tried to rise, but his body was sluggish. "Come back," he demanded weakly. Instead, Nadia stood tall, glass glinting in her hand. "No," she said, the word sharp as steel. Adrian blinked, realization cutting through the fog. Rage ignited his face. "You lied to me." She lunged. The shard slashed across his arm as he raised it instinctively. He roared, stumbling back, blood spattering across the concrete wall. The chamber erupted into chaos. He grabbed her wrist, twisting violently, but she kicked hard, driving her heel into his stomach. He crashed into the metal table, the candle tumbling and spilling wax. Flames licked at scattered papers, feeding quickly. Smoke thickened the air. The room filled with the crackle of fire and the thunder of their struggle. Adrian clawed at her, desperate, furious, wounded. "You are mine," he screamed, voice breaking between rage and betrayal. Nadia's strength came not from muscle but from desperation. She drove the shard into his shoulder, ripping free as he howled. His grip loosened. She shoved him back toward the spreading flames. The chamber burned around them, shadows dancing in violent light. Nadia bolted for the door, clutching the keys, lungs searing from smoke. Behind her, Adrian's voice echoed, broken, furious, almost pleading. "Don't leave me, Nadia." She didn't look back. The lock clicked open, and she burst into the stairwell, the roar of fire chasing her upward. Her chains were gone, but the weight of his words clung to her skin. Freedom would come with scars that no flame could burn away. Nadia stumbled into the night, coughing smoke, skin streaked with soot and blood. The city lights blurred through her tears, each step carrying her farther from the chamber's suffocating grip. She collapsed onto the pavement, clutching the shard still in her hand, until a stranger's gasp broke through the ringing in her ears. "Miss, you need help." Hands pulled the glass away, voices shouted. Someone called for an ambulance. Nadia could barely answer. The only words she managed were, "He's still there." Sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights painted the streets as firefighters and police rushed past her, disappearing into the burning building. Nadia was lifted onto a stretcher, her body trembling, eyes locked on the doorway she had escaped. Inside, Adrian's sanctuary collapsed. Flames devoured the walls, smoke poured through broken windows, and the secrets he had hidden for years finally clawed their way into the open. At the hospital, doctors stitched her wounds while officers waited. When the questions came, Nadia spoke haltingly, each sentence scraping her throat. She told them about the loft, the mirrors, the chamber below. She spoke of chains, of whispered promises twisted into threats, of the cycle of cruelty and care that bound her tighter than iron. Detectives searched the ashes. What they uncovered chilled even seasoned officers. Boxes of tapes, photographs of women who never came home, scraps of clothing, diaries filled with Adrian's furious handwriting. Nadia had not been the first. She was only the one who lived to tell. News spread quickly. Headlines branded Adrian a predator, a monster hiding behind the mask of a casting director. The public devoured the story, but Nadia refused to read the papers. For her, the truth was not a headline. It was a weight pressing on her chest each night, a whisper that followed her even in daylight. In the weeks that followed, she sat in courtrooms, her voice shaking as she gave testimony. The world called her brave, but inside she felt hollow. Every word another wound reopened. Adrian's face haunted her even in absence, his smile, his rage, his plea as the fire consumed him. "Don't leave me, Nadia." Freedom had come, but it carried its own chains. One evening, standing before a mirror in her small rented room, she traced the scars on her wrists. The reflection staring back looked older, harder, carrying shadows that would never fully fade. She whispered to herself, "You survived." Yet survival did not feel like victory. It felt like exile from the person she once was. Outside, the city pulsed with life, indifferent to her scars. Somewhere, laughter spilled from a cafe, footsteps hurried down sidewalks, neon signs promised beauty and success. The same promises that had lured her here. Nadia closed the curtains, shutting out the glow. The world saw her as the girl who escaped a monster, but in her silence, she knew the truth. Monsters don't disappear in fire. They linger, etched into memory, burning forever inside the ones who survived them.